Welcome, everyone, to our Industrial Advisors podcast. We are in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at the IAMC conference, and our topic today is going to be U.S. industrial development and what's going on with that. Lots of different changes and things happening in that space. And it's a pleasure to have Tyler Morris, who is a principal at Pure Development and totally one of our favorite guys in this industry. Great guy.
Gosh.
To talk about this. There's no better person to chat about the industrial development market than Tyler. So Tyler, thanks for being with us.
Welcome to the show.
Holy smokes. I don't know if I can make good on all those promises, but it's funny. This is taking me back when I was playing basketball my first year in college and I got hurt. So I had to sit out that year for a medical red shirt, and I was at the conference tournament and they had me come on as like a color commentator.
Yeah.
I was horrible, but it was a lot of fun. So hopefully I'm not as bad as that, but this is like taking me back sitting here, except for there's no court and there's no like sneaker squeaking or anything like that.
I want to stay on that topic because I love the fact that you were a hooper. So you went
at Boston U.
Mm-hmm.
Boston U, team captain.
We just toured that with my daughter last week, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And what'd you think? Just quick.
She actually going into it, sorry to sidetrack here, going into it, kind of thought Boston College and then toured Boston U, and it was all Boston U.
I love it.
No more Boston College.
I knew I liked her.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you played professionally over in Europe, is that right?
Yeah, I did.
So I do not know what position you played. I'm guessing. Here's what I'm going to
Center.
Think. No, I'm thinking you were a point guard who played tenacious defense, took care of the ball, made your free throws, and is that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, it's what I had to do.
Yeah.
To be on the court, to be honest with you. I mean, 6-foot white guy.
That's
there's not a ton of us running around out there on the court these days. And I couldn't play in today's game. I actually went down to the Final Four in New Orleans with the old athletic director that I played under and then the new coach at BU. He was not there when I was there, but great guy. His name's Joe Jones, and we were watching the game. I think you guys saw the Final Four. I mean, those teams, outside of Villanova, who was a little bit banged up, those were pros.
That was a great Final Four.
Those teams were unbelievable. And, of course, I played mid-major basketball, folks, so this is not, I'm not going to Duke or anything like that. But those were pros on that court.
We could do a podcast on basketball and how it's changed. Because I played in high school. I'm 5'7".
Yeah.
Well, actually, 5'6" and 3/4 at my latest
Shrinking
physical, so I don't know what's going on. And now if you play in high school at a competitive place, you are playing year-round, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
There's not you're all in with hoops if you're playing competitively, I think now.
Yeah, and
no question.
We don't need to stick on this topic, but for me, again, those were the things you kind of defined what you thought the attributes that I had or I needed to have to play. And when I was growing up, I played on a team with two guys that ended up going to the NBA. Mike Conley, still the point guard for the Utah Jazz. He was on my team for 3 years, and then Greg Oden, who was his partner that went to Ohio State.
Yeah.
If you remember those guys, the freshmen that took him to the national championship.
Sure do.
So I
was drafted to Portland, right?
He was drafted to Portland. Yeah. And so, I played with those guys for 3 years, and then I had two other guys along with myself that went D1 from my class. And the point that I was trying to make is, in terms of the commitment, we ran, and Jack Kiefer, who's in the Basketball Hall of Fame in the state of Indiana, he's won 3 titles. He's probably, some would argue, the best coach in the state in history.
Wow.
I mean, we ran it like a college program. So,
Incredible.
Jack, outside of a few guys that were just so physically gifted that they could do both sports and still have the commitment and still perform, the soft commitment you had to make, or the implicit commitment, was you're not doing anything else, right? Yeah. During the summer, you're training the same way we go to summer school for college. You're showing up, you're working camp, you're coming back in the afternoons to run open gym. Like, this was the commitment for the program. And for me, I even had to dedicate more, right? Because when I graduated high school, man, I was $165 soaking wet.
Yeah.
5'11".
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what you needed to do.
Just take care of the ball. Take care of the ball, play tough defense. Yeah.
That's it.
Bill, he was 8 inches taller than you at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but I could dunk. Not really, obviously. All right, let's talk industrial real estate.
Wait, is this an industrial podcast?
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. Yeah, we got time.
That was the best.
You guys have a nice half-court track. Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's right.
Move on. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, let's roll and talk about a little bit of industrial development, as that's what you do.
Sure.
Buildings. So, it's been a crazy last couple of years with industrial growth in the U.S. So tell us about that. Where are we at in the cycle? Hate to ask what inning we're in because nobody knows. But what does industrial development in the U.S. look like right now? What's the supply at? What are you seeing?
Well, There are obviously companies a lot larger than ours with more robust research teams that have put that out. And I guess where I would start, and I'm sure you guys saw this too, I didn't actually listen to the earnings call for Prologis, and we're here with a few Prologis folks here in Florida. But I think the number that they threw out was we're still light on supply by about 800 million square feet today, right? And when you look at that, it's almost like when you're in our world and you're seeing the amount of development trying to come out of the ground, you're like, how can that be, right? Because we've now been in this environment where you've had this insatiable demand for space. You have everybody building everywhere. You have, 10, 20, 30, 40 million square feet in some of these major core markets coming out of the ground. Right. And yet Prologis is coming on their earnings call and saying, hey, there's still more to go. What we're watching on our side real time is how will rental rates and rental rate expectations by both the developer and the tenant come to a head as we get down this path of insatiable demand meets available product. Because you now have, for the first time, at least in the last 4 to 5 years, or maybe even 2, since this whole thing sparked with COVID, right? And my grandmother started ordering groceries on Whole Foods, which I knew was just a shift, right? And she hasn't gone back.
That's right.
Yeah, once you start, you don't stop.
Yeah.
That's right.
Once that happened, we've had nothing but compressing cap rates across the country, if not the globe. And it's been possible because of this kind of experiment that the Federal Reserve started during the crisis 08-09, and we've kind of sustained with buying debt and lowering the Fed funds rate, all these things. Well, now for the first time, that's going the opposite direction. Right. Because of inflation real time, as well as their expectations on the health of the economy. So it'll be really interesting when both of those are moving north, if you want to pick a direction, on how that affects rental rates and whether or not clients are going to look at that as their total cost structure on a real estate decision and saying, I don't want to pay that much for my real estate costs. Or on the flip side of that, I'm still comfortable to the upside in terms of paying for that real estate cost because I know being in this location, in this market, and with this amount of labor supply, which, logistics and then labor, probably the two top cost considerations with making that real estate decision.
No question.
I'm still moving forward on the project. So that's going to be an interesting conversation to have. I don't know how you two feel about that, but.
Well, it's been interesting on the rental rate side because, tenants have been highly educated over the last, call it 12 to 18 months in not being worried about negotiating over, a couple pennies on a lease rate. They're into securing the right building for them, and landlords have pushed rents and tenants have accepted it. So it'll be interesting to see if this is what kind of impact it has on rental rates.
Well, and you said it. I mean, they're less concerned about the price of the real estate and way more concerned about where that labor pool is, right? And then the other factor is obviously the logistics of getting freight in and out of the building and to the end users are driving everything. Right? And labor is just a massive issue. But it is an issue when these guys are seeing 3x rent in many of the markets, right, that they saw just a few years ago. And I'm saying 3 years ago.
Few months.
In some cases,
a few months, real time, guys.
I mean, not fun.
It's not
being
hyperbole.
A broker,
right? No, it's in all honesty, it's about look, I see you guys as really important pieces to this whole discussion, particularly in these volatile times. We're here with a lot of corporate real estate heads. I see their job as super important and very, very hard as they, work with their executive teams and trying to make real-time decisions that are the best economically and the best from a strategy standpoint for their companies, which is just, it's so dynamic right now and it's changing every day and if you're not in it the way that you guys are, the way that I am, sometimes it's like, what's the right answer? How do I make this decision when it's changing so quickly? And that's the challenge. And so for us, if tenants can hold off, I think at least on the capital market side, things may calm down over the next 2 or 3 months. But at the same time, you're still going to have some construction price increases. And if the Federal Reserve comes back and says, okay, in the next 3 minutes, we're still raising rates, we may be at the low water mark relative to that. Even though we're at all-time low cap rates, we'll still continue to be there. We're at all-time low interest rates. I don't know if we ever get back to where we were maybe 12 to 18 months ago in terms of those rates.
Yeah, it will be interesting to watch. I think you make a good point that with so many unknowns as you go into deals today, construction costs, supply chain issues, relationships are going to be even more important
1,000%.
with, developers and with corporate tenants and brokers and just working with people that you trust and have gone down the road with. I think that that's going to be even more highlighted with all these unknowns. And so on the development side, you guys are developing everywhere. How has the supply chain issues kind of impacted your business, and what have you done to adapt?
Well, it has certainly impacted the business conversations to the point that we started with, Prologis' point.
Mm-hmm.
There's still light 800 million square feet. And so there's no shock. There's still people willing to pay money to get projects off the ground, to get into space, to lease space so that they can get this product, whatever it is, if it's manufacturing, if it's space for a data center, which is becoming a bigger piece of the pie now on, if you want to call that industrial, whether it's food grade or whether it's just straight distribution. So deals are getting done. What's different now, in my opinion, and for those that don't know, Pure Development started in 2009, 2010, strictly doing build-to-suit work. So traveling the country with our corporate tenants and developing their projects on a bespoke basis, giving them exactly what they want, whether that be office, manufacturing, food grade, et cetera. So that's not a commercial. It's just to say that a lot of our work is still in that space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's directly engaging with the client, trying to massage the nuance of what they're trying to design and build and execute on while sharing real-time data in the marketplace to get that deal done. So under that, guys, I think it's the discussions that have changed, not the deals. Now it's how can we, the developer, be as transparent as possible real time in the marketplace to say, hey, listen, like I'm not here to always share the best news. I'm here to share the real news to help you guys make a decision. And sometimes it's going to be very disappointing. But the promise that I have to you long term is that's what you're going to get from me. And some days it's going to be great, and some days it's not going to be great. But you're always going to go back and be able to communicate and say, I know where things stand. And if we don't want to move forward, that's a business decision you're making on real data, not on, overpromised data or anything like that. Which, look, everybody's human. We're not perfect. But if you can operate under that circumstance now, there's a lot of benefit in the future when things, calm down a little bit. So it's not necessarily the deals changing. It's the conversation to get the deals through. That's definitely a little more dynamic.
And you're really kind of going into it as partners, right?
You have to.
Yeah, and that's
have to.
That's what you have to do in today's environment.
Yeah. That's the best approach.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about innovation. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing, obviously, inside the box, crazy stuff, drones flying around buildings, robots everywhere. Tell us about the box itself.
Mm-hmm.
Are we seeing what, if any, innovation there? And are you starting to see any plans? We're also talking about autonomous trucks and electric trucks and electric semis. Yeah. Are we starting to talk about that? Because that's only a few years out now. Yeah. Are we seeing any designs to accommodate for that stuff?
Yeah, we are. I think, well, first of all, we do some work with the biggest e-commerce retailer in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Not to be named. And
undisclosed.
They kind of set the tone for everybody. I mean, and you guys know them well. They set the tone with their technology. And more than anything, the innovation is happening in that technology space. Okay, so there's only so many tweaks that you can make to a distribution facility and still make it functional, right? I think 5 years ago, you saw this emergence of taking down an extra 10 acres per site to make use for all the trailer storage you needed, right? That was this new thing. And then capital finally caught up to that. But at first they were like, how, with this poor coverage ratio and this higher cost per foot, how do we justify this? So then you had capital teams looking at it and saying, well, we're allocating a price per stall or a cap per stall, and because this is what's needed. Now it's a foregone conclusion. Actually, if you don't have it, you're getting penalized, right, for that growth.
That's right.
So that's on the physical space side. On the technology side, what I think is a really innovative piece of, which is kind of a soft pivot here, that no one has been talking about here, that I think is going to be the next frontier for companies that figure it out. And I'm actually have a really good, becoming a good friend in Denver who's starting a new company to focus in this area is reverse logistics. Mm-hmm. So everybody talks about forward logistics, particularly like, let's just stick to retail for a second. And you heard it this morning during our ethics presentation from the general counsel of Airbnb, but like ESG initiatives, sustainability, the way that companies are being judged is so much more robust than just, what is the the EBITDA look like over a certain period of time? How quickly can I get that product, which is kind of what I thought was the second step, which was, business productivity, but now the way I'm judged on how quickly I get somebody the product that they order, but now it's how quickly can I get it to them with having the least amount of environmental impact or the least amount of social impact. And when you look at return profiles, I mean, look, 25% is probably really conservative. It could be a lot higher in certain industries of the amount of orders that actually get returned. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a crazy statistic.
And then 20% of those are damaged. The rest are not damaged. And companies like, I won't name any companies. I almost did because it's just confidentiality, but there are companies on the retail side that have one distribution center for the entire country that they ship all this product back to regardless of where it goes initially. So you think about the cost structure for a company that's on the retail side that has to ship 100% of their returns, regardless of where they originate, back to one distribution center and then figure out a system that scores them effectively to make use of as much product as they possibly can to reduce the ROI impact on that initial sale, right? And at this point, you have e-commerce companies that are offering free returns. So think about their ROI and what they have to budget for the profit on a sale is diminished greatly by the factor of 25% of this will be returned.
It's coming back, yeah.
And it's of no use to me, right? So that's the business case. If someone can figure out at point of sale, and my friend's company is trying to, there's a company called Optoro, which is coming in and they're trying to help companies on the retail or e-commerce side figure out what to do with returns. My friend's company is really trying to focus on how do I go in and kind of last mile the returns, where they don't have to go all the way back to Reno from New York. They can sit in Westchester, New York, or utilize distribution space as a part of an already existing distribution facility. And then if they have a scoring system, instead of sending it back, they score it and say, no, they just didn't like the size. There's no reason to send it back. We can ship it up to New Jersey or over to PA, save on the distribution costs and save on the ROI for that initial point of sale. So that's the business case. But the other case is all of those returns go into landfills, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
They just get thrown away. And I wrote down a statistic here on a piece of paper. It's 6 billion pounds. That
Amazing.
25% of returns is 6 billion pounds into a landfill.
Yeah.
And so, I guess the point is, the innovation, I think, is going to really happen on that space. 20% of retail is in the U.S. is e-commerce, so that has plenty of room to go.
Yes,
but you're talking about reverse logistics is a fraction of a fraction of that.
Yep.
There's big time implications on the innovation side for companies to step in on the tech side as well as on the real estate side to make use of that reverse logistics. And almost, I'm sure there are companies in the R&D phase of figuring that out, but no one's really implemented it strongly.
I totally agree with you. And I mean, the amount of e-commerce growth, obviously, we've had in the last couple of years has been so fast. They haven't been able to really perfect the reverse logistics returns. I got an example. We got a desk delivered to our house a couple of weeks ago, and the surface of it was scratched all the way across the top. So, of course, my wife calls them and says, hey, you got to pick this up and ship us a new one. They said, well, how about we just give you 50% off? It's like, well, no, it's scraped all the way across the top. They said, fine, we'll ship you a new one. She goes, okay, what do I do with the old one? Throw it away. Like literally. So it's more expensive to ship it back. And to your point, it's going in a landfill anyway, which is crazy.
It is really, when you start to think about it, it's almost shocking, right? Staggering, the numbers that none of us are really even considering.
Yeah. And the company,
right.
every, logistics company is dealing with it and figuring out, okay, what is best practice? And no one's really mastered it yet. So we'll see who does, and all those companies are looking hard at it because, to your point, 25% of that is going back.
Yeah.
How about onshoring? You guys do a lot of build-to-suits.
Yep.
Have you done anything recently from a manufacturing standpoint related directly to onshoring?
I don't know if the decision, we're finalizing it. We're one of the two preferred developers for GE Aviation around the country.
Yeah.
We've done 6 manufacturing facilities for them. We are completing one in Ohio right now. And I'm not sure if it's directly related to onshoring, but we are seeing an uptick and companies considering that as a part of their supply chain. And I think prior to COVID, a lot of the supply chain was focused on distribution until, you had some of the issues with China on the geopolitical side. You had COVID happen, and companies were already moving some of the manufacturing here when Trump was in office. But this has kind of added fuel to that fire. And you have roughly, I was reading this report by Thomson Net, I think there's roughly 500 to 600,000 manufacturers in the United States today. And what they were saying is if the average contract size for each of those manufacturers is, say, I don't know, $1 million, and they also predicted that 83% of those that were polled in that group said they were either likely, somewhat likely, or highly likely to bring that manufacturing, at least a portion of that manufacturing, back to the United States. If you just went with that average small $1 million deal size for each of those manufacturers, at 83% of that, call it 600,000 number, you're at $450 billion of investment coming back to the United States.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal. That's a big deal for the country. It's a big deal for these states. That's a big deal for the supply chain.
Yep. Jobs,
and
everything.
Jobs. I think there's 2022, they were estimating they're going to add 200,000 jobs just in manufacturing back in the United States. And to your point, for a long time, and I think this gets back to the cost structure that we were describing with distribution and how companies make decisions, for a long time, the offshoring was related to labor and trying to get the cheapest labor possible to produce the good. But now they're seeing, given these other forces at play related to getting products certain places or the reliability of the supply chain and availability of that product being high on the list of people that are buying it, right? Can I get the product today for a reliable price and get it in a reasonable amount of time? That's sort of jumping line ahead of that labor.
Right.
And so they're just saying, hey, we're willing to pay more.
Yeah.
Now on that piece of it.
Yep.
Like we're not going to pinch pennies over here because this piece is just so critical for the business to be successful.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing a lot of companies, to your point, with the desire to come home.
Yeah.
But because of the labor component, we are seeing a boom. Maybe one of the hottest markets, not in the world, is Tijuana, right? You got a very low vacancy rate, a lot of buildings being, built on that. We did a podcast on it a couple months ago. That market is on fire with nearshoring because the labor's there.
Right.
And it's right there at the border,
Exactly.
so lower logistics costs. And certainly we're seeing it. And I know the Phoenix market, industrial market, is on fire with trying to bring home microchips. So you got companies locking up land, locking up tons of residential because there isn't enough housing, because they're bringing it home.
Right.
They are bringing it home. So we are definitely seeing manufacturer making a strong comeback. We just got to figure out the labor component.
Yes. No, it's a great point. I think there has been this shift, though, globally related to almost like an industrial insurance policy, like redundancy in the network, redundancy in the size of the facility that I'm building, and I think that's really interesting. Size of buildings are getting larger. You see, Greenville, South Carolina, Greer, South Carolina, near the inland port right there off of Charleston. 2 years ago, the average distribution building was 100,000 feet. Now it's 250,000 feet.
Yeah,
right,
we have a
in terms of the
client
new
doing a
requirements.
1,000,000 footer there. In
Exactly.
That market.
Yeah, you got it. So you're seeing it. And do they need all the space today? No, maybe not. But they probably want it just in case.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing more fascinating than talking industrial real estate and basketball combined.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
this is going to be one of
a
our
great
best ones.
podcast.
I love
sure.
it. I
Next
love it.
is baseball, and we'll figure out another topic along with that.
Well, if everybody knew just how fit you two were and how much you set the standard, then no, seriously, guys.
Yeah.
This was fun. I really appreciate you having me on, and this was, would love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, super insightful, great topics. Appreciate you whipping out some stats too.
Yeah,
that was
that was
impressive.
awesome.
I know Matt loves stats, so
I'm stat geek.
yeah, he was. I could see him like writing stuff down over there as you were spitting some games.
Yeah,
so.
by the way, there's like a 47.2% chance I'm going to move to Fort Lauderdale at some point in the future.
I love
this place is cool.
It is very cool.
It's 3:00 here, and it's 80 degrees, and the pool looks pretty nice now. So I don't know. Might be time for some
Might
sun.
skip
I
a
think
couple
so.
classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, play hooky a little bit. But
right.
thank you again,
Awesome.
guys.
Thanks a lot.
Tyler, thank
Appreciate
you.
you being on the show.
Absolutely.